All right, hey guys, we're back here. We're going to talk about absolutism, which is the absolute control of the monarchy, the kings and queens of Europe. And I'm going to do this in 4 videos because I'm going to focus on Spain for one video, France for another video, Russia for another video, and then finally we're going to focus with England in the last video. So the first one we're going to do is absolutism in Europe, and we're going to look at King Philip II first of Spain. Now, King Philip is one of the Spanish Habsburgs, okay? So when we talk about in class all the connections of the Habsburg families between Austria and Spain and the Netherlands, and their connections through France and their connections through England, and you can see how like this group of monarchs and kings and queens are all kind of interconnected in a family sense. You know, you're going to notice that it's really, really creepy in a lot of ways, but it's also how they kind of gain control. They really believed in purifying the royal blood and keeping everything within the same family. All right, so let's look at King Philip II of Spain. Here's a picture of him. Well, we'll get this first. He is a Spanish king who fought for Catholicism against Protestants in Europe. Now, he was married to Mary Tudor for a while. You guys know her better as Bloody Mary. She was the daughter of King Henry VIII and Catherine of Aragon. Of course, when King Henry VIII wanted to divorce or annul his relationship with Catherine of Aragon, he sent her back to Spain with Mary Tudor going with her, and she remained Catholic and made the connection between him and Philip II. Of course, when she dies, he will try to marry Elizabeth I, her sister, but she's a Protestant. They won't get together, and that's going to cause all kinds of conflicts down the road much, much later. Okay, but when we get, we looked at the 30 Years' War. Not that he was there because he was dead by that time, but this idea that it's the Spanish fighting for Catholicism against Protestants all over Europe. They had control of the Netherlands, which they'll gain independence from the 30 Years' War. But Spain had a lot of Catholic control. The ties to the Holy Roman Empire. Charles V is Philip II's dad. So there's a lot of connections here between these families and these empires. Okay, so there he is, and you notice he's a Habsburg, so he's got the Habsburg chin. It's just a small chin because he's early in the line. We get to later Habsburgs, it's a very massive chin. All right, so the thing was, with Elizabeth I, he wanted to marry her to connect England and Spain together. However, she was Protestant. She didn't want to do that. She was obviously fighting for Protestantism since she was now the head of the Church of England. So Philip, because of other issues, not just the marriage part, but also trade issues along the North Sea, since he controlled the Netherlands and a lot of the trade that was going up there, he decides he's going to attack England, and he's going to send his Spanish fleet. And if you remember, Spain's going to have a large fleet of ships simply because they are traveling all over the world exploring. So they have these ships that are protecting these explorer ships, especially the silver ships that are coming out of the Potosi mines in Bolivia and South America. I mean, they're sending Navy to protect those silver trades so they're not attacked by pirates or privateers or other groups trying to steal money from them. And they're moving those guys back and forth. So the Navy's pretty big, and it's called the Spanish Armada. Okay, so here we are. We have this conflict again between Catholics and Protestants and Catholics and Protestants and Catholics and Protestants. There's going to be more deaths in religion when it comes to war, especially amongst their own faith. Remember, Christians are Catholics and Protestants are all Christian, but they continue to fight each other in these issues. All right, so he launches his Spanish Armada, and what he's going to find out, or what's going to happen to the Spanish Armada, is the smaller, faster ships of the English are going to destroy it. And when this happens, it's going to put really Spain behind the 8 ball. I mean, you're talking about losing an entire navy, an entire fleet of ships. It costs millions and millions of dollars. Now, they have the money coming over from Spain, or from South America into Spain, but it's not enough. As a matter of fact, it puts Spain into such debt because they have to pull out more loans that it carries almost into the 1980s. All right, literally 400 years later, and Spain was still repaying the debt from the Spanish Armada. And it really asserts England with this moment in time as a powerful country. Spain had controlled much of what was going on. They had controlled South America. They had started to control what was going on in the Indian Ocean basin. They were controlling trade with Japan, and now the English have defeated them. And when that happens, Spain starts to take a second back seat, and England starts to rise up, and that's where you're going to have the movement of the beginning of the British Empire, where they're going to go into Indian Ocean trade basin and take over. They're going to go to North America. They're going to start to spread their influence all over the world, and it all stems right from this point in history. All right, so here's a little painting. The red and white flag ships are the Spanish ones. You can see how big they are versus the much smaller English ships, which are the red and white flags right here. Okay, and really is the largest fleet ever to be destroyed by, or at that time, when it comes to destroying ships, and the amount of money that's behind it and what's going to be the problem there. All right, a couple of things under Spain, under Philip's II, you got to understand with Spanish and Spanish art. We haven't talked about Spanish Renaissance. It comes along a little bit later. But remember, this time period of absolutism and Renaissance and exploration and Protestant Reformation are all going on at the same time. Okay, so in Spain, you also had some arts flourishing, and they're going to be in literature and in actual art itself. With the literature, the story of Don Quixote de la Mancha by Miguel Cervantes, it's really a wonderful tale. It's really, really sad in a lot of ways, but it's the first true European novel because it's focusing on life in Europe at this time period and focusing back towards the Middle Ages and how life in Europe was then. It's much different than the Decameron. It's much different than Dante's Inferno. It's really focused on not positive results to what's going on. And Don Quixote is a poor noble in Spain who wants to be a knight, and he's going to go off on all these crazy adventures, and there's a lot of irony involved here, like his horse is a nag, and the nag's name is Rocinante, and Rocinante means nag in Spanish, and he's got leather armor, and he's got a wooden sword, and he's got a fat squire named Sancho Panza who's riding a donkey. And he's trying to live this idealistic, like, optimistic life, and it's failure after failure after failure until essentially he's put into a crazy house. And, you know, Miguel Cervantes kind of looks at an introspective look at what's going on in Europe at the time, especially in Spain, to really focus it into Don Quixote, which makes it a wonderful novel. And it's a great story if you want to read it. If not, they made a cartoon movie, and it's not bad. All right, the other part is the Spanish arts. We're looking at actual art itself, and El Greco. El Greco means the Greek in Spanish. He was a Greek man who had moved in Spain, hence they gave him the title as a nickname, El Greco, and he stuck that as his name. But he was a Greek painter, and he's known for expressionist style. If you see this painting of Jesus Christ here, there's you should notice a lot of differences between what he did in the Spanish Renaissance versus the Jesus that you might have seen out of the Northern Renaissance and definitely out of the Italian Renaissance. All right, and you can see he's got the centered hand here, that the mind and the body is centered, and the heart and the spiritual soul center. The halo is very, very shaded. It's right around his head. You can see that there. But Jesus looks skinnier. Jesus looks a little bit more ragged. He doesn't look like the healthy Jesus that you would see out of the Italian Renaissance. And there's a whole lot of differences here when it comes to expressionist style. It's really what they feel is important and how they see things, hence the expressionist style. All right, so understand these rulers are looking at themselves much, much differently now. With the conflict going on between Catholics and Protestants and the kind of control and the larger armies that are going to be built, these kings and queens are going to start to kind of handle themselves much, much different than previous kings and queens. And it's going to make a difference when it comes to how they rule their countries, okay? So, first of all, they are really considering themselves an absolute monarch. They're being trained to understand that they were given this right to rule from God, hence the divine right. So go ahead and underline where it says divine right here, because that's huge, and that goes back to the idea like the pharaohs had divine right. You had this mandate of heaven in China. Same thing is going on here in Europe too, where this divine right to rule is going to become really, really critical. And like I said, they're being taught this from an early age, that they are going to be kings someday, so they're getting divine right to rule. So why do they feel this way all of a sudden? Well, there's a couple instances. There's cause and effect here. You have religious turmoil going on between the Catholics and the Protestants. And really, the Protestant Reformation is going to spur absolutism because it gives monarchs a chance to step away from the Pope and be in control. On the other side, it gives those Catholic monarchs the opportunity to even align themselves more closely with the Pope, excuse me, because the Pope relies on them. All right? So the rulers are going to continue to control religious worship because of the religious turmoil. They want bigger armies. They're going to go on conquest. They want to destroy. They want more land. Really, the 30 Years' of War is kind of a great example of this. So you have larger armies, which is going to raise taxes. So the power and control over the courts and other nobles is going to be immense. You know, they're all looking. We look at Louis XIV. He is going to have absolute control over his nobles more than almost anybody. It's going to cause a lot of issues in the long run. Of course, more taxes, and they're going to tax the peasants, means more revolt, okay? But with more taxes, you have bigger government controlling finances. And that means financing, providing for armies, financing, providing for colonization, mercantilism. I mean, that's where the money's going to go. And to make these countries stronger, of course, it's going to turn around and put a lot of wealth into the pockets of the kings. So here you go again. I put this divine right, this power to rule really stems here with absolutism, and it's going to change kind of how Europe is going to focus itself from here on out. So in the next video, we're going to look at the Louis and the French kings and go from there.